ॐ सहना भवतु सहनौ भुनक्तु सह वीर्यं करवावहै तेजस्विनावधीतमस्तु मा विद्विषावहै। ॐ शान्ति शान्ति शान्तिः। Before we go ahead with the satsang, sit quiet comfortably, close your eyes, let us try to meditate on Om. Let us very gently sing Om and completely absorb in the sound of Om. 3/4 of exhalation Om, 1/4 silence. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Let us look into the fourth Prashna, the 9th, 10th, and 11th sutras before we go to the fifth Prashna, which is basically about the Omkara. It's very interesting to look at these sutras the way that this Upanishad deals with. One thing that very clearly that we could have the clarity of our mind that it is the first which is the sankalpa. That means I want to see, and then it conveys that this is the Vidyana, and that conveys it to the mind, and mind organizes the sound or the seeing faculty or hearing faculty, and that produces a sensory organ. This is how the flow of the sensory organ from the deep inside the consciousness that comes about. But then the desire is from the consciousness that it has desired to see, and the process of seeing is developed, and the process of seeing has developed the eye, the instrument to see, and the instrument to see has created an object outside, and the object is there, then we see it, and then this process of seeing goes to the mind, and then who is really receiving all these things is supposed to be the consciousness. And that's what last time we said, the yajamana, that means you, the individual consciousness, or the jivatma, what we call the you, yajamana. He has given us the drishtanta of a yajna, the havan that is practiced in this culture, and there is supposed to be one yajamana who has, for on whose sake, on whose behalf, the brahmanas doing various aspects of it, various ideas that are coming about. We have a whole set created in our script, in our culture, to say that how this activity takes place in the form of a homa, havan, or what is called as yajna. And that's why last time also I was recollecting that there are so many rishis who were there, participated in the havan, in the yajna, and which is supposed to putra kameshti yajna. But Yajamana happened to be Dasharatha. So therefore, the phala goes to Dasharatha. Yajamana gets the phala. So this is how basically the whole structure is there. Here, your individual self, Jivatma is the Yajamana, and then what happens is that the desire that comes about, wanting to see, hear, and all those things, and that's what is the Sukshma Sharira, where that seeing, hearing, etc. are developed, and then it manifests the form of Sthula Sharira, which is there, this body with all these senses, and through that, basically, you perceive the world. But now, who is perceiving the world? It is the individual consciousness which is perceiving the world at Jivatma. Now, they tried to explain it so many different ways. In fact, parallelly, I'm also doing the Mandukya Upanishad. Similar kind of a thought comes in the Mandukya Upanishad, that very similar kind of ideas are being used there also, Mandukya Upanishad. In fact, those days when they wanted to explain about these things, they can explain in terms of various examples, or the analogies. And the analogy is that the analogy of the individual consciousness is like the way that the pot, and the universal consciousness is the space outside, and the pot there is a space. And is the space different from that space outside? No, it's all the same. But only thing is, because it is in the pot, it is called as ghatakasha, and then normal akasha that is there, mahakasha, it is there outside. So now we are supposed to be the individual consciousness, which is supposed to be like ghatakasha. It is not a product of Mahakasha. It is not a, there is no question of like cause and effect kind of a connection between the Mahakasha and Ghatakasha. It is the same thing, just separated itself out in the form of a, within this small little part. It's all. This is not a product of that, but this is exactly the same. So this is how we have, they try to understand, they try to explain us. Various such kind of examples were worked out in the philosophy. But today, there is something which is much more easier way, I think, that we could explain is the way that consciousness is supposed to have this total freedom. That's what is Atman has the total freedom, and therefore that it can. The freedom is that it, by giving up its freedom to become anything which is of a lesser freedom. So therefore, it is the Brahman, which is the total freedom, has given up its freedom to become something like an individual consciousness. And that's what you and me and all that, we are all the Brahman becoming separated out from the Brahman in the form of individuals. It's like the way that a thin soap bubble separating the air, which is inside also the same, outside is also the same, but separated by a thin wall. That's how that we are. But even this particular analogy is not sufficient, because essentially that experience belongs to the same consciousness, that's all, who is experiencing through all these things. So therefore, though the individuation takes place, and from there the sankalpa starts, and that sankalpa is the way that I wanted to see, I wanted to hear. So therefore, all these things are created. So we developed all this right up to the level that we have sensory organ to the, and which comes in contact with the objective world outside. Now, if the objective world outside has to be interacted by the sensory organ, that means to say that this object quality, this object, whatever that can interact, is also, it has taken inside. Like the way that the ears only can hear the sounds. So, sound aspect outside, that is sound is there, its subtle aspect is there inside. Outside, whatever that is there, the solid concrete aspect is there. The same solid matter aspect is there inside in the form of its tanmatra. So, like that, what we have, our sages are there, that we have these tanmatras inside. The reason for assuming that is basically our mind can create all these objects that's there inside in the form of a dream. So dream creates all these things, and like the way the gross world is created by the gross material, the same way the subtle world creates a subtle world, and the one who creates that is basically that one tanmatra, one subtle aspect is created. That's what is the dream personality. Like the way the wakeful personality who is experiencing with all this gross world, this subtle world is experienced by the subtle personality. But ultimately, that whether wakeful personality or the subtle personality, who is that who is experiencing that, is supposed to be the yajamana. So ultimately, it comes to the same consciousness, whether it is in the wakeful state or the dream state, experiencing that, but separated itself from that universal consciousness, separated. That's one of the reasons why whatever the experience of universal individual consciousness that is there, though every individual consciousness same as the universal, but then atman, but it does not mean that one uh, individual atman gets an experience. Experience can be translated to the others. They have to have their own experience, or they have to go through that whole process themselves. But one thing is that all of you, all the individual consciousness can experience the same thing, like we're all nothing but Brahman. There is only one thing, that's what is Brahman experience. If this experience has come, then, and another important aspect is that, in fact, in Mandukya says very eloquently, Karika, that is that all these experiences are there. They, whatever that is the impression that are left on this, do not go to the ultimate consciousness or the jivatma. Jivatma is not touched by any of these things. That means to say there is happiness, sorrow, and fear, favor, all these things that are the experiences that are there in the world outside, or that are there in the dream, they do not touch the individual consciousness or the jivatma. It does not carry. It's there that, like for example, dream Purusha created, wakeful Purusha created, Vaishwanara created, who is experience, and that's what is experience that is there. So prana creates all these things and then gets these experiences. So this is how the whole structure is given. Now, uh, that's what in the fourth Prashna that we have seen. And this, because that he has the internal aspect of it, this is that that the gross world and the subtle world inside, they are the same. Only thing is that the same aspect of it in the subtle world. So therefore, the subtle world whole construct can be can happen, like the way the gross world construct can happen. That's what in the Upanishad Sutra that we have seen in the earlier sutra that was on the uh, eighth sutra, seventh sutra, eighth sutra, which says that Prithvija Prithvi Matracha, Apaha Apa Matracha, Tejaha Tejo Matracha, Vayuscha Vayu Matracha, Akasha Akasha Matracha, Chakshusa and uh, वायुश्च वायुमात्रा च आकाशश्च आकाशमात्रा चक्षुश्च द्रव्यश्च and श्रोत्रं च श्रोत्रव्यं च घ्राणं घ्रातव्यं च रसश्च रसयितव्यं च त्वक् च स्पर्शयितत्वं च वाक् च वाक्तव्यं च हस्तौ च आदातव्यं च उपस्थश्च आनन्दयितव्यं च वायुश्च विसर्जयित्वं च पादौ च गन्तव्यं च मनश्च मनव्यं च बुद्धिश्च बोधव्यं च अहम् अहंकारश्च अहंकर्तव्यं च चित्तं च चेतयितव्यं च तेजश्च विद्युतश्चं च प्राणश्च विधारयितव्यं च. So experience is yajamana, then how experience does not touch the consciousness? Yeah, that's a very interesting question. So therefore, all these activities that they are withdrawn, that's what in the seventh sutra, eighth sutra, he says that all these things are withdrawn. Prithvi, Prithvi Matra, and Vayu, Vayu Matra, and all these things that they are withdrawn when the person goes to deep sleep state or the wakeful state. This is what the discussion about the wakeful and deep sleep state he was talking about, because earlier the question was that who wakes and who sleeps. And the sleep, all these things were taken, therefore, basically, all these things are withdrawn. That's one of the reasons in sleep that the seeing and the object, both these things are withdrawn. The hearing and the sound is completely withdrawn. And that's what is, you can experience that when you are going to sleep or when you are falling asleep, you see that how objects become hazy, and together with that, your perception also becomes hazy. The whole thing gets merged into it, into one thing. What is that? And that's what is the same one prana that's going on within you. So then afterwards, ataha param yat atmarupam jalasurya bhok bhoktartva kartrutvena saha anupravishtam. This is what is Shankara's commentary. It's very interesting what Shankara looks at the whole thing. Ye shahi, so, because basically all these things will go back to the self. Therefore, when we come back, once again, all these things will come back and then the action takes place. So that means ultimately where all these things go to the self. But then when you are in the state of self, that's what in the sleep state, do you remember anything? Do you have anything? The good and bad, right and wrong, values, that, all those things are not there. If they were supposed to be there with you, then they would have been acting in the sleep state, but the sleep state is completely blank. You're talking about dreamless sleep state is completely blank. So therefore, basically at that point of time, that there is nothing there. So that means to say all that whatever that happened in the wakeful state has not touched the experiencer deep inside. Yajamana, it never touches. That's the reason why that Yajamana in the deep sleep state is supposed to be Brahman himself. Atman itself, Jivatma, you are in the state of Jivatma. And that Jivatma sthiti is the one which is total freedom. What we were in the beginning started that Jivatma as a total freedom. So therefore that it is total freedom. The moment that you have any impression there, any tendency from the wakeful state is carried, that means you don't have the freedom. But in the deep sleep state, that there is total freedom. That means you are not bound by any of these things. That's why our some of the sages have said that when you go to sleep, I remember very well the mm, Annamacharya Kirtana, where he says that whether you are a king or whether you are a servant, the sleep is the same. In the sleep that you are one and the same thing. You are young or old, in the sleep you are one and the same thing. You are a man or a woman, in the sleep you are one and the same thing. That means to say, this is what is called as Upadhi Dharma. See that whatever that is superimposed on you, that's what is Upadhi. Upadhi carries these things. All these experiences, Upadhi, it belongs to. And Swami Anubhavananda gives in a very another beautiful way that expression he says that uh, man is you naturally, and then husband is an upadhi. Husband is a role that you have to play. I always say that we play several roles, vritti. So it's a vritti. Husband is a upadhi. Similarly, woman is the original, and the upadhi is the wife or the sister. So whatever the experiences of sister is there or wife is there, it belongs to the upadhi. It doesn't belong to the self. So when you go further deep into it, the self doesn't even have this idea of that man or a woman. Even this is also at a subtle level is supposed to be upadhi. That's one of the reasons when you go to sleep that all these upadhis you leave behind because upadhis belong to the world outside. See, you just imagine that is it not the upadhis created after all this seeing, hearing, and all those things have generated, then the upadhis created? First of all, that as a child, when you are born, all these things are created. Then the child comes out into the world. And at that point of time, child doesn't even know that he is boy or a girl. It's only later on this consciousness comes, awareness comes that you are boy or a girl, and from then further upadhis are started. So we carry all these upadhis even before all these upadhis started. You are seeing, hearing, all those things are the primary aspect of it. The objective world and its interaction is the primary aspect even before the upadhi started. So therefore, when in the sleep state, you are withdrawing even that primary aspect of it, upadhis are already gone. So they belong to the upadhis. They belong to your they do not even touch the yajamana. So therefore, that you are not touched by that. In fact, there also that Mandukya Upanishad, the Karika, it gives a very beautiful. It says that sky is there, and then the clouds and different pictures that are there in the sky. The sky itself is not touched by all those things. There's so much of dust, so much of uh, thunder, all these things happen in the sky. But then sky itself is not touched by any of those things. The same way that consciousness is not touched by all those things. But, or in another word, this is what is the way that Vedanta explained. But today I could see that moment that you identify yourself, that freedom, the freedom is not touched by any of these things. And that total absolute freedom is what is the sleep state. And unfortunately, we say that it's a bound state, but that's supposed to be the free state. Total freedom, you're not bound by anything. And in order to make yourself possible to do any activity, then you need to bring about various sensory organs and all that perception. But the moment that you bring in the perception, all those things, that images, that impression also comes back into it. So a person who can really understand that, identify himself with the total freedom within you, then there is no question of he is coming back to the world. Or he is coming back to the world as total freedom. With the total freedom, he comes back. That's the idea. And so that is what is the next sutra, ninth sutra. It says, Esha hi drushta, srashta dhota, shrota, dhrata, rasayita, manta, bodha, karta, vijnanatma, purushaha, saparekshara, Akshara Atmani Samprati Tishtate. So one who sees, who touches, who hears, who sees, and who uh, dhrata, that means who uh, smells, and then Rasayita, who enjoys that. Even the thinking that Bodha, Karta, Vijnanatma Purusha, all these things are Vijnanatma Purushaha. Now he calls it as Vijnanatma Purushaha and Atmani Sampratishtate. So he is somebody who has established himself into the Atman. Shankara says, Esha hi drushta, srashta, shrota, grata, rasheta, manta, bhokta, karta, vijnanatma. This is what is vijnanatma. Vijnanam vijnayate anena iti karanabhutam buddhyadi. So now there are two different types of vijnana that we have used. One is the buddhi, we call it as vijnana. It's a very lower level of vijnana, and that's what is Karanabhutam Vijnana. This is what is basically the Karana, Tat Karana, and that's what is Buddhi, and this what we call it as Vijnana. One Vijnana that we call it as the Buddhi, which is the Karanabhutam. Idam tu Vijaniti Vijnanam Krita Karaka Rupam. Tadatma Tat Swabhavaha. So this is what is basically the Tat Karaka Rupam, Kartrukaraka Rupam. In Vijnanatma, that means to say the intellect level, Kartru, Karaka, these two forms are there available. How subtly that Shankaracharya goes to the details of it. Intellect always looks at the form of Kartru and then Karma. That means to say there is some Karana and then Karaka Rupam. Kartru, Karaka, Rupam, Kartru. You see, children, they do not have that intellect. I look at that. When we adults do something, we always find out why do we do that. We ask that. But children do not have why. They just do it. Like a child looks at your face, smiles. You can ask the question, why do you smile? It's just like that. There's no reason for that. Where an adult smiles, you'll have to ask yourself why that fellow is smiling. Similarly, children, they just don't have a reason. Why? Why doesn't that? Because that intellect, which is supposed to buddhi, karyakaraka rupam, that has not yet developed. I remember, my a little girl used to come to our house when we were all kids, and my mother has to come and open the tower board for her to come in and all that. So my mother would get irritated and she would ask, "Why did you come?" And the girl says, "Because," and we are waiting. What is the answer? There is no because. Just like that. Many times you see the children like that. They say, "Why did you go there?" Because, and then you're waiting for the answer. There's no answer at all. It just stops there. There's no question of cause. Where is the question of because? So that means to say this is one vijnana which develops later on. That is the kartrukaraka rupam. That's what is developed later. And from that, then we come to say that yes, I have done it. I have to do it. All these things come about later on. But then before that, there is nothing like that. That vijnana is talking about. And that vijnana is something which is basically seeing, hearing, all those things are bundled in one particular rupa, vijnana rupam. And that's what it says that tadatma tat swabhavaha. It is what is swabhava. It is our own nature, swabhava, wanted to see, hear, etc., etc. And puranat purushaha. And that's what Purnatvat. Purushaha is the Purnatvat. It's complete. There is nothing like. You see, the question is why. If you have an answer, that means that you are not complete. Then you are fulfilling yours. You are filling yourself with something. Therefore, that why has an answer. If there is no why, you just do it. It's like the way that you can't ask the flower, why did you plant tree? Why did you give flowers? There's no answer. Nature doesn't have an answer why. Why sun rises in the east? There's no answer. Why mango tree gives such wonderful, delicious mangoes? You ask. There's no answer for that. So these are the things where it is from the consciousness it directly manifests. It does not have the later, that is karaka, the karya karana, uh, karya karana, Sankhyato Upati Purnat Purushaha. A Purushaha is that counted with a Purna. Surya, Jala Surya Kadi Pratibambhasya, Suryati Praveshatam, Jaladhyat, Adhyaya Shoshate, Pare Akshare Atmani Sampratishtate. It is like the way, I mean, this is what is the analogy that he gives, that it is like the way that when you have a pond, a very still, quiet pond, and then the sun is being reflected on the pond, or the moon is reflected on the pond, and you see the moon. You mean to say that because it is reflected on the pond, something in the moon reduced? Nothing. Or is this pond, the Surya, the sun, or the moon that is there reflected in the pond? Will reflection gets affected if you disturb the pond, water in the pond? But you mean to say that moon gets disturbed? No, moon doesn't get disturbed. Once again, the stillness comes, moon is once again the same. Temporarily, that it is being affected by that. For the local reasons that it is affected by that, but it is not influenced by that. So this is what when and what happens to this reflection when there is no water in the pond. The moment that water is not there in the pond, what will happen to the reflection? Will it go anywhere? No, it will go back to the moon itself. And moon doesn't even know that it has been reflected by the pond, and then the reflection has gone back to the moon. Doesn't even know. It's no consequence at all. So Jivatma Paramatma relationship is of no consequence. Because no consequence, because there is no question of causative connection. It is not for some reason that it has come, so that some reason it will go back, or it has to be looked at for a reason to go back. Nothing like that. It's one and the same thing. It's not influenced by anything. That's why Esha hi Drushta, Swashta, Shrota, Ghata, Raseta, Manta, Buddha, Karta, Vijnanatma. This is what is Esha hi Vijnanatma. And Vijnanam Vijnayate Anena iti Karanabhutam Buddhyati. Where is there is Karanabhutam, that's what is Buddha. Idam tu Vijanita, Vijanati iti Vijnanam Kartru Karakarupam Tatatma Tatsvabhavaha. Vijnatar Swabhava ityartha. This is what Esai Drishta Swashta Parama Atmani Sampratishte. Vijnanatma Purushaha. This is what he calls it as Vijnanatma Purushaha. Sa Pare Akshare Atmani Sampratishtate. So all these things will go back to Pare Atmani Sampratishtate. That is Atman Paramatman, which is Akshara. That means that there is no Kshara in that. That's what is Paramatma Sampratishtate. It just goes back to that. Tadekatva Vidaha Phalamahaha. So now Upanishad says, Parameva Aksharam Pratipadyate Sayohavai Tadachayam Shariram Alohitam Shubhram Aksharam Vedayite Yastu Somyaha Sa Sarvajnaha Sarvo Bhavati Tadesha Shlokaha. The shloka is that Parameva Aksharam. This is what is the ultimate Akshara. That means that which does not die. And Pratipadyate Sayohavai Yad Achayaha. That means to say there is no question of substance for that, so that there is a reflection for that. Tadachaya and Ashariraha. There is no, you see, Sharira of its own. Aksharam Vakshamana Vishesha Pratipadyate. This is what is Shankara. There is nothing like a Visheshanam, that means the specificity that can be, like as I said, that husband is a specificity, wife is a specificity, child is a specificity, human being is a specificity. Whereas the specificity is not there, Visheshanam is not there, and that's what is the state of Aksharam, Parama Aksharam, Pratipadyate Ityetat Uchyate. That's what it is. Sayo Havai Tat Sarveshanam Vinirmuktaha Achayam Tamo Varjitam Ashariram. The Sharira is something which is Shriyate iti Shariraha. That's what is the idea. That means to say that which grows and destroys, that's what is Sharira. And Shriyate, that is, there are three important aspects that is there, Sharira. One is the Nama, and the other is Rupa, and Karma, uh, or the purpose. So these three things are there for the Sharira, and the purpose is gone, the Nama Rupa is gone, then the Sharira is gone, or it changes, Sharira changes. Nama Rupa Sarvopa Adhikara Sharira Varchitam. The Sharira does, and Atman does not have any Sharira, that means to say Nama Rupa. Nama Rupa comes basically when it is, actually it is like this, that it appears to be taking a Rupa, but it does not have that Rupa. Like for example, the Atman that is there in our body, it's there throughout the body, or within the body it is there. That means to say it is the shape and size and type of the body. But then you mean to say that it's confined like that? No. Nor does it have to go out somewhere and it leaves. Nothing like that. Like the way that the pot is broken, everything becomes one. Or in other words, that it the confinement that is there, bondage for a moment that it keeps it. The moment that you leave this bondage, you are free. So it just becomes free. So alohitam, that means to say it does not have any particular visheshana or color. And lohitadi sarvaguna varchitam. It has various uh, categories that are there. That's what is lohitadi sarvaguna varchitam. Yatayetam atha shubhram. This is what is shuddham. None of these things are attached to that. And shuddham sarva visheshana rahitatvat. Absolutely, there is no visheshana available there, rahitatvat. Aksharam Satyam Purushakyam Apran, and this is what is another Upanishad also. Aprano Hyamana Shudra Aksharat Paratah Paraha. Like that, it is discussing about the Anandam Brahmano Vidwan. And that's what is the experience of Ananda. What is that? Ananda experience is that Brahman experience is what is that? It is Apranaha, Amanaha, Shubhraha. Prana is not there. Manas is also attachment to Manas or identification with Manas is not there. Shubhra is totally pure. Here also Shuddham, Shubhram, Sarva Vishesh Daitatva, Aksharam Satyam Purushakyam, Apranaha, Amanaha, Agocharam, Shivam Shantam, Shivam Advaitam, Chaturtham Manyante. This is what is Mandika Upanishad talks about it. Chaturtham Manyante, Sabhahyabhyantaratam Ajaha. Inside and outside Ajaha, there is nothing like a birth at all. Birth and death does not have, it does not occur. So you are never born, you never die. There is nothing like birth and death for you. And now there is one bubble, so bubble is created, another bubble is created. That's all. Vedayate Amanaha Agocharam Shivam Shantam Sabhahyabhyantaram Majam Vedayate Vijanati Yastu Sarvatyagi He Somya Sa Sarvajnaha. Sarvajnaha, that means all knowing, and it does not mean actually that all the details are known. No, where the knowing is not the pressure on somebody is Sarvajnaha. There is nothing like knowing has to take place. That means to say he is satisfied with himself, supremely satisfied. And that's what is the idea of Sarvajnaha. Satena aviditam kinchit sambhavati. Purvam avidyaya asarva asit. Asarva asit. Punar vidyaya avidyapana ye sarvo bhavati. Tat asminnarthe esha shoka mantraha bhavati. Yuktartha sangohataka. So all these things are the state where sangraha has taken place in the body, and the moment that one goes away, death, all these things sangraha goes away. You're free from that. Vijnanatma saha daivescha Upanishad sarve pranabhutani sampratishtante yatraha tadaksharam vedayate yastu somyah sa sarvajnah sarvameva vivesheti. What is this Vijnanatma saha? Devaischa sarve prana bhutani sampratishthanti yatraha. It has got everything that is there within it, in this Vijnanatma, it is like the way that Vijnanatma is not just only your Vijnanatma, the Vijnanatma of the whole universe that is there, it has got everything. So therefore, like the way that whatever that you have become, there is certain portion of Vijnanatma, some tiny portion, somebody else has become another tiny portion, somebody else has become, but it is the same Vijnanatma, like the way that same sunlight reflects on various objects. And what reflects on the various objects is small little tiny sunlight. But what is the origin of all these things? The same sun. And that's what is Vijnanatma. All these things where from it has come. This is supposed to be Vijnanatma, which is supposed to be all the knowledge. There is nothing which is beyond that. All the activities, and that's what is Akshara. Just as the manifest world, unmanifest world is infinite, therefore the possibility of manifestation also, that's what is Vijnanatma, is also infinite. It's also infinite. I was imagining about the night sky. This I used to, when I was sleeping on the terrace, I used to always think that look at the stars, one star here, one star there, that's shining. And in between the stars, there is such a huge distance of darkness that is there. I was thinking that the star is just what a minute percentage of that starlessness, that is a vacuum that is there in between. And that one such minute star is supposed to be solar system. And on that solar system, another tiny, minute star, very minute, small little speck is the Earth, on which what we are. I always used to wonder, admire. We feel so great, but actually that unmanifesting is so big, manifest is so little. And that too, what we are is supposed to be so little. So therefore, basically, that's what is tadaksharam vedayate yasya somya sarvajnah swarmeva vivesheti. So everything comes out. Vijnanatma sa daivescha ajnadipi pranaha chakshuradaya bhutani pruthivyadini sampratishtante pravishanti yatra yasmin akshare tataksharam vedayate yastu he somya priyadarshana sa sarvajna sarva aviveka avishati avivesha avishati ityartha. So there is no avishati, avivesha enters into it, vishesha enters into it, it is supposed to be avivesha. So this is what is basically the creation is the way that it is causation, and this is supposed to be a upward going back to the causation so that you go to the source. So he talks about all these things as a form of a source, going from the manifest world to the unmanifest. Now that comes the fifth prashna, and अथहीनं शैव्यः सत्यकामः पप्रच्छः सयोह वै तद्भगवन् मनुष्येषु प्राणनान्तमोङ्कारः अभिध्यायीत कथमं भाव स तेन लोकं जयतीति. So it's a very, very interesting discussion that goes on. Now the Savyakama, he asks about one thing is very clear, that death is something like is merging into that, like the way that every night we merge into that, the same way merging into the unmanifest, infinite that is there, and then you merge it into that. Asheshataha. Visheshana is the way creation, Avisheshana is the way that we merge into the. So now, fine, intellectually this is right and I can understand it. Probably that I can be convinced that there is, I am convinced myself that there is something like a death that really exists, but intellectually I'm convinced. But is there a way that I can enter into that state? Is that what is the way that they say that you see that avidhyayita katamam vava satena lokam jayati. So how we can conquer this world? Loka means actually the loka means it says the world, but actually alokyata is the loka. That means what you perceive, what you experience is supposed to be the loka. So therefore, how we come out of this perception? Manisheshu prayanantam, that means at the time of death. Omkaram avidhyayita. So how you do the avidyana of the Omkara. So finally he comes to the now for the question of how this Omkara is used for in this journey at the time of death or at the time of dissolution, how we can go back to the source. Why? There are two questions. One is why do we go back to the source? Why do we have to go back to the source? Another thing is that how this Omkara will help us to go back to the source. One thing is that we have earlier seen that whatever that punyena punyalokam naiti papena papam, earlier we said that a portion of this udana is the one which carries all these things and then go with us. So that means to say we are already bound. The consciousness which is not supposed to be bound, but then when it has already a direction that is given by the udana. So we are bound to come back with that bondage. We don't have the freedom at that time. Though we are supposed to be free. We don't have that experience of freedom. We feel that we are bound. And that illusion that we are bound is something which is continuously bound. And they're bound to do something, bound to do this, bound to do that. So all those things are carried with us. But then Omkara is something which will help you to go beyond. Now, with all this idea that you see that experience is the same consciousness, Jivatma, and the experience is not touched by any of these things. All these things remain in the world outside. And that's what is the deep sleep state gives us. All these things are clear intellectually, theoretically they are clear. But how this Omkara helps us to understand that. That's why in the beginning that we did that small little experiment. Of all the senses activities that are going on, the most powerful senses is the talk. And the talk is the expression of, the clear expression of spandana. That means a wave. Wave is the way that the talk is expressed. And the beginning of the prana is in the form of wave. That's what we have seen in the beginning. Pranamcha, Raimcha, when it is said, it is in the form of wave. And that's why it says that two aspects of prana. The Aditya has become this like a pendulum. Inhalation, exhalation, inhalation, exhalation. This is continuously going on, this pendulum. And this spandana manifests in the form of speech. And therefore, actually, speech is the most powerful sensory perception, sensory activity that is there within us. And, all the dialogues that are there can be beginning is the ah and the end is So they are enveloped within, they're all contained within the vibrations of ah and And then you envelop it with that. So by saying oh, That's what is the pranava. And once you say Omkara, that means you are actually covering the whole thing and replacing whatever the dialogue is there and then followed by the silence. That's why Mandukya Upanishad says Chatushpatitavyam Omkaram. The four padas are there. And the fourth pada is the most important, where it is the silence. So every time you say Om, mind goes to that silence. But then what happens is again a dialogue comes about. And dialogue is the most primary way that the occupations start taking place, your isolation start taking place. It's very difficult to come out of it. In fact, you just sit down and say Om and go to silence. Even there also the dialogue comes that let me relax. Even this also a dialogue. Let me be, let me go to that gap between the exhalation and inhalation, another dialogue. So everything is converted into dialogue. Even your practice is also converted into a dialogue. So that means to say, it looks like that it's so difficult to escape from this dialogue. Most primary disturbance that we have is in the form of a dialogue. In fact, we have seen Om, we meditate on Om, and then we go to silence for a few seconds, but again a dialogue comes. It's very difficult to come out of it. Very, very difficult to come out of it. That's why that dialogue is the most important way that the mind keeps itself into the vritti. Unless until you free yourself from that dialogue, there is no question of transcending. The Vijnanamayam, there are two types of Vijnana, as I said, that the inferior Vijnana, we cannot come out of it. That's why this dhyana is something which is very important, very subtle, very deep. And there is only one thing which can take you to that silence, because the dialogue is the most primary thing. And Om is the one which envelops all the dialogues. Therefore, Pranava, Omkara, is the one which can really take care of all the dialogues to go to that silence. The very structure itself has that idea of going to that silence, which is supposed to be Atmasthiti, Jivatmasthiti. And then if you're able to continue with that, then that becomes like your own. So that's why this is Manusheshu Pranataram Omkaram Abhidhyayita Katamam Bhava Sayetana Lokam Jayati. How are we going to do this dhyana, avidhyana, and we can reach beyond all these words to that silent bit. Now, here what happens is that the dialogues belong to the wakeful state and equally dream state also. But then, both in the wakeful state, dream state, if you are not identified with the dialogue, every dialogue is secondary, and then you identify yourself with the silence. That's what is the one which gives you freedom. That is the idea. So let's go to Shankara Bhashya about this particular thing. Prananantaram Marananantaram. Yavat Jivam Ityetatu. So that means to say, we always consider Sayaha Kaschit Thavai Bhagavan Manusheshu Manushanam Madhyetat Adbhutabiva Prananantaram Marananantaram Prayanantaram, that is what is Marananantaram, Yavat Jivam Ityetatu. One thing is that you are Yavat Jivat. In this world, as long as that we are on one side that we are having the jiva, that means to say living, but at the same time, every moment death is occurring, death is happening. Death is going on. So whatever that the death is going on, if you are able to free yourself from that, so that's what is Mananantam. You're free from that. That means whatever that goes away from you, if you're able to leave it at that moment, totally, completely, no dialogue left within you, that means you have already dead for that idea. But we carry on and on and on. We keep on storing it, holding it. In fact, we give so much of importance to that holding and storing. It may be anything. It may be wealth, it may be material, it may be thoughts, ideas, it may be knowledge. Anything can be that we can hold on to the wealth. So, you look at the mirror, it doesn't hold anything. Can we also just leave it like that? Just keep ourselves very clean? Nothing from that last moment it is there, because last moment whatever happened is already gone, finished. It is dead. It doesn't exist anymore. It has already gone to the Brahman, Atmasthiti. So yavat jivat tata omkaram abhidhyayita abhimukhyena chintayet bahya vishayebhya upasamhruta karana समाहुत चित्तः भक्त्या भक्त्या आवेशित ब्रह्म भाव ओंकारे. This is something which is bhakti aveshita brahma bhava omkara. That is what Patanjali also gives us, that tasya vachakam pranavaha. And first of all, he says Ishvara, Ishvara pranidhanatva. That's how the Sutraji goes. And what is that Ishvara? Klesha karma vipakashayehi paramrishta purusha visheshaha Ishvaraha. That means that is there within you, vishesha purushaha. That means avishesha, that means there is no anything that is there in the form of klesha, karma. All these things are gone. And that Purusha that's there within you is supposed to be Ishvara. And that's there within you. Patanjali is very clear in defining that Ishvara. And Tasya Vachakam Pranavaha. You call it as Pranava. And then he next sutra says Tajjapa Tatatta Bhavanat. You have to have that Artha and Bhavana. Artha is this aspect of it, that it has to take you towards that silence. It will take you to silence because the silence is a part of it. And second thing is bhavana. That means you say bhakti aveshita brahma bhavana. Yes, that silence is supposed to be bruhat, the Brahma. It is uh, that shunyatva in the sky that you have. You become one with that. Omkara. Atma pratyaya santana vichhedo bhinna jatiya pratyanantara akhila kruto nivasastha. So now he comes to the Bhagavad Gita idea. Nivasto shikha samepi dhyana shabdarthaha. So he gives us, once again, he takes us to that Bhagavad Gita where he gives, Krishna gives us hints. In fact, he carries that idea from that hint, saying that try to sit in a place which is natyuchitam, natinijam, chelajana pushoktaram, pleasant way, and then it doesn't give you any trouble at the body level so that you free yourself from the body. Then he says that yatha dipo nivasasto ningate sopama smritaha, where Deepa is there which does not oscillate, protected from the wind. It is just the fire from the wick is just going in the upward direction. And that you keep in front of it. Nivasasta Deepashika Samaha Abhidhyana Shabdartha. The Shabdartha is that you sit in a comfortable position, comfortable time, and then just fix your eyes on that flame which is going in the upward direction. And when you see that flame going in the upward direction, the flame is one thing which is alive, which is living, and which represents prana very easily. So therefore, that this goes in the upward direction, and that's what is supposed to be the one that you fix your eyes on that. Parigraha Tyaga Sannyasa Shaucha, and before that, he says that with all the other things that Yama Nema he brings about in that. So Dhyana Shabdarthaha, afterwards Shankara says, Satya Brahmacharya Ahimsa Parigraha Tyaga Sannyasa Shaucha Santosha Maya Pitvadi Aneka Yama Niyamanu Gurvitaha. That means to say, basically, if you really want to experience that Brahmasthiti, Atmasthiti, Swarupasthiti, the silent state, then you need to follow how many sages for how long time that they have come to this conclusion of doing all these things, and that is Satya, Brahmacharya, Ahimsa, Satya, Brahmacharya, Aparigraha, Tyaga, that means not identification, Sannyasa, Shaucha, Santosha, Maya, Vitvadi, Aneka Yama Niyama Anugrihitaha. You not only follow these things, but they become like your way of life, Anugrihitaha. That means to say, it's a very beautiful word. You are blessed by these things. You are constantly blessed by. That means to say that there is nothing else which is more sought after than the Brahmasthiti, Atmasthiti, and that's what is Parityaga, Aparigraha, Tyaga, Sannyasa, Shaucha, uh, Santosha, Mayavi, Ityadi, Aneka Yama Niyamanu Guruvitaha, Sayevam Yavajjivana Vratadharanaha, Shatamanam Bhava, Katamam Bhava, Aneka hi Jnana Karmabhi Chetarva Lokas Tishtati. Teshu Tena Omkara Abhidyanena Katamam Lokam Jayati iti. So without these things, you cannot come out of Loka. See, look at all these ideas that is Yama Niyama is given. On one side, that we have importance of this and that, and property, materialistic position. When you are caught up in all those things, then where is the question of mind going to that silence? So we have, and a very beautiful line it says, Niyama Anugruhitaha. That means you have to have the anugraha of all these niyamas that is there. Tassays hovacha etatvai satyakamaha. Now Upanishad says, Param cha aparancha brahma yad omkara tasmad vidvadinaita aneti kataramanveti. So here he says that paramcha aparamcha brahma yat omkara. This difference of para and apara. See, this omkara is one sound, omkara is one syllable, which takes you from the apara to para to apara, or in other words, that's how the creation has taken place, and then apara to para is the way that sadhana goes on. The reversing the apara to para. And that's what the creation is by the sound. Silence becomes a sankalpa from there, the ma, u, ha, and then the whole creation has taken place. And withdrawing from this, dissolution from that is ma, a, u, and then sankalpa to silence. We go in that way. Tasmai sahovacha, etadvai satyakamaha, parancha, brahma yat omkara. One way, I mean, very subtle thing is that Brahman itself cannot be defined, cannot be understood, cannot be explained. Because the moment you say this is Brahman, That means that what else outside that is not Brahman. So therefore, that you can't define about the Brahman, or you cannot give a quality for Brahman that this is even Satchit Ananda, when they say Brahman is Sat Satchita. So individually, it's not his characters, Satchit Ananda. It is the Brahman itself, not the characters of Brahman, the Brahman itself. Same way that Omkara is Brahman itself, and in a different word, because Satchitananda from different angles you perceive the Brahman, that is what. But here, from the para and apara level, when we look at try to integrate these two things into one syllable, that can represent Om is supposed to be uh, Brahma, tad Omkaraha. Tasmad Vidyana Nevaite, the Katramahve. So, Pranakhyam Pradhamajam, and why this Omkara is much more representative, and that's what Shankaracharya gives. Aparam cha Pranakhyam Prathamam yat tad Omkaraha eva Omkaratmakam. Omkara Pratikatmat Tvat. Param hi Brahma. What is this Param Brahma? Shabdyad Upalakshana Arham Sarva Dharma Vishesha Varjitam. What happens is, as I said, that you might stop every other activity when you sit for meditation, and then you see hearing all the sounds and seeing objects, everything you have arrested, you're peaceful. But in spite of all those things, that there is an internal dialogue that goes on. Ultimately, what goes on inside you is the dialogue. Though the respiration is going on, but the respiration itself does not bother you in as an exhalation. But the moment it becomes like a dialogue, okay, I should slow down the breathing. Some dialogue is attached with that respiration. I must watch the respiration, even that dialogue. So therefore, sounds seem to be the most primary thing which comes in the form of manifestation. Dialogue is the way that the manifestation comes. Bah, very, very difficult. Try, sit down. Don't even want to dialogue, even that I'm watching the breath. I'm relaxing even that dialogue. In fact, what happens is that when somebody tells you instructor gives you an instruction, relax your calf muscle. What happens is that you repeat that dialogue in your mind. We say that you are repeating your dialogue, and that you are repeating the dialogue is the one which is working on. In fact, it is not the instructor's dialogue which is working on you. Just watch it again. Instructor's dialogue doesn't work on you because it is outside. That you repeat inside, and that what you repeat, your mind gives instructions to the body. And the last way, the last form in which the mind gives instructions is in the form of sounds. And that what that really envelops the sounds is the Sankara. And that's what is Spandana. That's the reason why Omkara and Prana, both these things are Spandana. Spandana matrameva jagat. Modern scientists also say that the nature itself is in the form of wave. Wave is the form in which it is there. So therefore, basically, that Omkara becomes Saha, that means that Brahman, Yadyapi Omkarasya Sakalamatra Vipagno Na Bhavati, Tathapi Omkara Abhidhyana Prabhavat Vishishtameva Gatim Gachati. So it is Omkara is the way that the whole thing manifestation has taken place. That's why I said that there is nothing which escapes Om. Everything is there in that Om. So therefore, everything is from there. But in spite of it, it is whatever is the instrument by which that multiplicity is created as the instrument, to which that you have to withdraw yourself. So therefore, यद्यपि ओंकारस्य सकरमात्रा विपाज्ञो न भवति तथापि ओंकार अभिध्यान प्रभावात् विशिष्टामेव गतिं गच्छति. So therefore, basically we use एतदेक देश ज्ञान वैगुण्यतया ओंकार शरणः कर्म ज्ञानो उभयभ्रष्टो न दुर्गतिं गच्छति. So therefore, you can't go anywhere else. You can go to the silence by the taking Om. Might take some time. Says that you can never brashtata. That means you can never miss the path if you take Omkara. That's the reason why Omkara becomes the most important syllable in the whole of spirituality. That's all. So from the second sutra and the fifth shloka, in the fifth question, let's try to look at next time. And this goes in details about the Omkar. We'll stop it here. Sit comfortably, close your eyes. Let's say 3 times Om, breathe in. Om. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat.